I did not want to be a nurse. I became a nurse out of necessity for good salary and know I could get a job anywhere.
She may have become a nurse out of necessity, but Charlotte Huddleston cared for South Bend patients at Memorial Hospital for years. She loved her work, but as the only black nurse, and a black woman at that, her experience there was, to put it mildly, a challenge for her. I'm George Garner from the Indiana University South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center, and we're telling local history in South Bend's own words.
Were you born in the area also?
Oh, yeah, 1941.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's Candace Leuthold. She's with David Healy, interviewing Charlotte back in 2002. Candace told them that after high school, she tried to get a job locally, but ran into entrenched racist barriers.
Part of the reason I had to go was because I was kept out of clerical jobs that were available that I couldn't get, and not that I wasn't qualified.
One time, Charlotte had a phone interview, and the interviewer couldn't see that she was a person of color.
I had the job over the telephone. When you hear me speak, you could assume that I was not Afro-American or whatever. And I'd have the job, and they'd see me, well, the job, oh, well, that job is gone, I'm sorry. So I ended up going to Chicago, not wanting to go. But my mother kind of encouraged me because she did not want me to do domestic work or anything other than clerical.
It's not that Charlotte's mother didn't respect domestic work. It's just that her mother wanted something different for her young daughter.
My idea originally was going, in the business field, in the clerical field, probably a legal secretary or something.
She found that clerical or even paralegal work wouldn't pay as much as nursing. Plus, she had come back to South Bend, and she needed to save some money.
When I came back here, I had a chance to live in the projects, and so my rent was reduced and, something I can handle.
Stable housing helped Charlotte get a job at downtown South Bend's Memorial Hospital.
What year did you start at Memorial?
In 1968, January 2nd.
And what ward were you in?
I was afloat.
Okay.
That means I went all over to other areas everywhere. I started out on PED.
PEDS means pediatrics.
It was interesting, and I learned a lot, but I had children in those age ranges, and it was just real hard. And Memorial, at the time, was very, very, very prejudiced. Very. I mean, people that were trained there as Memorial students left after they graduated because it was so bad. I said, somebody's got to stay here. Somebody's got to break the ice, do something. So I stayed. But I went through a lot. But I didn't leave.
Were they prejudiced outwardly, or did you find
Well, I had patients that used the N-word, didn't want me to take care of them, those kind of things. I had patients like that.
Charlotte found herself feeling isolated for several reasons. Nursing has a hierarchy with different levels of education and expertise, not to mention different fields like pediatrics and emergency. You see what I mean? Charlotte was an LPN, or licensed practical nurse.
And here I was the LPN, and I was Afro-American and the only one. And so I was kind of by myself, but I liked being by myself, so that didn't bother me.
In the 20th and 21st centuries, South Bend has had two main hospitals. There's Memorial, which is still downtown, and there's St. Joseph's, which used to be downtown. It was on the east side, by the new St. Joe High School.
You think the quality of care was less if you were African American at Memorial?
It could be, yeah. Because if someone feels very uncomfortable about you and they have a preconceived idea for whatever reason, okay, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. Or I'm going to go and do my job, but I don't have to talk to them. I don't have to interact with them. I don't, I just act like they're not there.
Well, were the black patients kept in separate rooms?
No. The black patients, there was very few black patients there, first of all. Very, very few people would go there because they knew the reputation. And then when they were there, they weren't comfortable. The nurses, I think some nurses had difficulty being a nurse to that population.
Was that Memorial or St. Joe?
Memorial, but you people just wouldn't go there. They just felt very uncomfortable, and it just had a reputation. And it doesn't take much to spread the word. If something is going on, right, you're going to know, if it's okay.
With an ever-present potential for mistreatment, African-American South Benders kept each other informed about where they would be treated fairly and safely, and not just when it came to health care.
The housing around here. Now, when I was growing up, I remember blacks lived in certain areas, just certain areas, no matter what. Well, of course, Ranger didn't even exist. But Mishawaka, no. Blacks did not. Very, very. I knew 2 black families in Mishawaka that went to Mishawaka High School, and I dated a guy from there, and that's why I know. There's a way of you doing things to other people that they get the message without you doing anything real overt or causing any real big attention. Because you can feel it. I know pretty much most of the time if somebody has a real problem with me because of my color. They don't have to say anything. It's almost like osmosis, I know it, and I act accordingly.
How long were you at Memorial?
I probably did that for 5 years, off and on. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Through maybe, early 70s or?
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
Do you feel like at any point in time changes were made as far as the prejudice that was going on?
Well, yeah, I think so. I haven't worked there in a long time, but they have a lot of blacks in pretty nice positions there now, from what I can tell. And they have a lot of Afro-American patients. Some prefer to go to Memorial rather than St. Joe. So I just happen to go to St. Joe more because we're Catholic.
I want to hear Charlotte talk more about her identity as a black Catholic. But first, David Healy asked her about going to high school.
You graduated in 1958.
Yeah, and I graduated a year ahead of my class because I went to summer school for 4 summers straight. Just because I wanted to. I love school. I cried when I graduated because I didn't want to leave school. I've always liked school. I could be a permanent student any day.
And you graduated at 17.
Yeah.
You seem to have such a good feeling about high school. Do you recall any events that were racially motivated?
Yeah, Central was what I call the melting pot at the time, because even Mayor Boyd's children, which he was the mayor of South Bend at the time.
That's Mayor Ed Vorty, who served from 1956 to 1960, and his son was named
John. John was one of his children, and they went to Central. They walked from Chapin Street to Central. Even as a teenager, I thought that was really something for the mayor's kids to go to the public school, not private school, not Catholic school, whatever, just public school. So it was a melting pot because everybody from everywhere in South Bend, the boundaries weren't so strict. And I met a lot of friends and everything, but when I get out of school, now in school everything was, pretty good, right? Okay, you get out of school, come down here. Kresge was right there.
She's talking about the Kresge's lunch counter. It's downtown, on the corner of Michigan and Jefferson. Well, it was there. The city tore the building down decades ago. Charlotte would go there, and she was friendly to everyone.
Well, if you saw any of the white students, most of them, out of school, and hi, so-and-so, well, they didn't know you. And that's the only time you remember, oh, yeah, right, this is, a different world out here, And then, but I didn't dwell on it. I just was aware of it. And I always forgot, because I'm very friendly. And and they just act like they didn't see me.
But when you were in school, you didn't have that problem?
No, everybody, it seemed like we were, unless somebody was, I don't remember anybody being just where they just would not interact at all. I just don't remember that, but I'm sure there was somebody. But basically, we were like one unit in school, because there was sports.
Now, I've heard different people say different things about their time in Central. Charlotte said everybody was like one unit. But then she started rolling that back, at least a little bit.
But I do remember, like, the debating team. There was only one black kid on the debating team. I always wanted to kind of be, in acting. I always thought that was fascinating. But I never tried out for the school play. One black guy was in the school play. He was very good. But I would never have thought to get on the debating team. And I would have loved that. But at the time, it didn't cross my mind because it didn't seem like something I was supposed to be in. You know what I mean? I didn't feel real comfortable trying to do that. It's like, this is just for those people. So I didn't even try.
I can't help but think about who she meant when she said it was just for those people. Though, maybe, there's also just a hint of regret over the risks in her life that she didn't take.
Now, with my mindset now and the way I think, I would go for all of that. I wouldn't let anything stop. So I think it was all of that. And I never saw myself being any less than.
She never saw herself as being any less than. That included her choice to break with her parents and convert to Catholicism. She was really young when she did it.
Yeah, well, I told my parents I wanted to become Catholic at 8 years old.
8 years old? That's really something. And her parents supported her decision.
They said, as long as you worship God, we're not opposed to it. And that's another whole story. The religious thing and prejudice. Oh.
If you're familiar with Catholicism, which I am not, you know that the sign of peace is when, during Mass, people shake hands with each other. For Charlotte, in South Bend, that was a really different experience.
And there's still some people right now, I'm sure somewhere, when you do the sign of peace, they don't want to touch you. They think they might get black, or something. I don't know.
I had to pause the first time I listened to that. Her fellow South Bend Catholic massgoers wouldn't hold her hand. Like they say, I wasn't surprised, but I was shocked. And it wasn't just the one experience.
When I was a teenager, I'll never forget it. I was late for St. Augustine. That's where I go. And I was like in the back, kind of standing up because it was crowded. And then they just started the sign of peace, and people would put their hand out. Now, at our church, we hug, kiss, talk, the whole thing. Okay, I'm standing there, and nobody turned around. Nobody wanted to touch me,
There was another time at St. Adalbert's Church. St. Adalbert's has always been an immigrant church. And while today that means mostly Mexican-American immigrants, back then it was all Polish-American.
All Polish, and I'm trying to figure out. I just knew by gestures what was going on, and that was hilarious. So, but anyway, I dare say if I went to certain parishes, I would probably get a cold shoulder, even as a black Catholic. A black Catholic is another story. And that's another story in itself, in South Bend or anywhere. I've had mistreatment from blacks because they said I sold out and went to the white man's church. I've had mistreatment from white Catholics because they don't think we belong there. So I've gotten a double dose of all of that stuff forever. And I had a lot of guys couldn't date me because I was black Catholic. So that's another issue in the racial thing around here.
Okay, so did you go to Linden School?
Yeah, I went to Linden, and it was Linden then.
It was Linden School.
Yeah, all my schools are former.
I had to pause a bit on that line too. All my schools are former. The former Linden School was where the MLK Recreation Center was, on Linden Avenue. That whole block is now under redevelopment to become the new Dream Center.
Yeah, Linden Elementary, Central High.
So you knew Ed Myers then?
Ed Myers was the first black principal of a South Bend school. This was in the late 1950s.
Yeah, but he was not, I wasn't there when he was principal though.
He was a teacher there.
Yeah, he was a teacher.
After World War II, the school corporation started reshaping their boundaries so that more and more black students would go to Linden and a few other schools. When Charlotte went there, though...
It wasn't predominantly black then. It was just a few whites going there, you know.
For someone who graduated high school in the late 1950s, the 1960s saw a lot of people divert their attention towards the unresolved questions of our multiracial and multicultural democracy. As a young woman and a young mother, though, Charlotte, understandably, had different priorities back then.
What do you remember of the civil rights movement here in South Bend?
Well, I came probably at a funny time, because I do remember when I had a family by this time, and I was living what they call, you've heard people, older people refer to LaSalle Park as the lake.
Yeah.
Okay, I was living on the lake at LaSalle Park and raising my family. But I wasn't as conscious as I am now. I mean, in other words, I wasn't reading the newspaper. I wasn't paying too much attention to what was on television. I think I was too engrossed in raising my family and working, and what was priority.
You were preoccupied with your family.
Yeah, I was preoccupied. So things were happening, and my kids weren't involved because they weren't old enough, you know, at the time.
This explains why so many grassroots organizations try to provide childcare during their meetings. It's so hard for parents, especially of young children, to carve that space to stay informed and involved. But by the time her kids got older, the post-1960s wave of black activism had really taken shape.
Well, like my one daughter, the oldest daughter, she was militant. Now that was what, before 1980, it was between, somewhere in the 70s. You know, black is beautiful, and, you know, all that kind of, yeah, black power. And so she was really feeling it.
Charlotte was young once too, and it got David thinking about some of the differences between growing up in South Bend in the 1970s versus Charlotte's generation.
What was it like as a young girl growing up in South Bend in the, would be the late 40s and 50s? What was it like to be a teenager here? It was,
I thought, and this is me, that it was wonderful. I mean, if I, you know, when they say, well, is there a period of your life you'd like to have? I said, I'd like to just have for a month, you know, being a teenager. Because I had a wonderful teenage life. As far as my social, I was very happy. It was uncomplicated.
That does sound wonderful. Of course, there were complications, even if at that age, she didn't fully see them yet.
When I went skating, we could only go on Monday night, and we had to listen to this organ music, and every now and then something would hit him, and he'd try to play boogie woogie, and we'd think, oh, yay, you know. and they might spin records for a minute for him to rest or something.
I'm sure that organ music was terrible to her teenage ears. But she said something right before that sounded, to me at least, like a deeper injustice.
We were very restricted to one day, and that was at in Playland Park.
Playland Park used to be where the Indiana University South Bend student housing is now.
And we thought, oh man, this is wonderful. You know, that's all we had was Monday night, where the other kids had all of the rest of the week. And but that's what we had, and it was fun.
Now you went on Monday nights at Playland.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it was all African Americans Monday night?
Yeah, I mean,
were there any whites at all?
I guess they could have came, but I don't necessarily remember any coming. I mean, it wasn't like, okay, you can't come in tonight, but they just chose. I mean, that just probably wasn't a comfortable setting for them, especially if they had other opportunities. I went to the Hearing House. You heard about the Hearing House?
That's another former place. Hearing House was a community center about a block from where the Kroc Center stands today.
That was our big social place at the time. And so we had little places where we could socialize and have our little dances and our little parties. And we had a lot of house parties. And they were definitely nice and clean. I mean, parents were around and, it was real nice.
Going to other friends' homes was safe, but going to a predominantly white space? Well, that wasn't always.
It's just certain places. Like I said, there was kind of like probably a unwritten, unspoken code, and you knew kind of where you can go, where you can't go, and where you should go, where you shouldn't go. And I don't remember anybody just telling me you can't go there, or somebody stopping me and saying you can't come in. I just didn't.
Charlotte Huddleston certainly did live through a lot and saw a lot. But she also had a love for people, especially those who experienced the world differently than her.
I don't care where you come from, who you are. If I meet you and I like you, I like you. And I just value whatever it is about you that you can share with me. And I'm me. I'm always me, and I'm always the way I want to be. I don't have to put on airs for these people, and I teach them things because there's things to learn from every group. You don't have the corner market on uniqueness. Everybody's unique. And every culture is unique, and I love learning about everybody's culture.
South Bend's Own Words is a production of the Indiana University South Bend Civil Rights Heritage Center. This episode was produced by Nathalie Villalobos. It was written and hosted by me, George Garner. Kevin Marsh was the co-creator, and its theme music was by Josh Woodward. Are you looking for more honest conversations about the history of South Bend? Visit us and learn how IU South Bend students inspired the transformation of a once segregated, city-owned swimming pool. We offer guided tours and put on numerous public events that shows how the history of oppression echoes through this city today. See and hear more local history, or plan your visit, all at crhc.iusb.edu.